The question of Troy is not just about a city, it's about the boundary between legend and reality. Was Homer chronicling history or creating it? Did a great war truly rage on those Anatolian plains, or is it a tale polished by centuries of retelling? For millennia, the tale of Troy has captivated humanity, dismissed by some as mere fiction. Yet, the lingering traces of a real city, entangled in the folds of history and myth, have always haunted our imagination. Today, with groundbreaking discoveries and meticulous research, we're closer than ever to unearthing the tangible evidence of this fabled metropolis. The boundary between legend and reality is about to blur, and what lies beneath could rewrite everything we thought we knew about the past. Long before it was a mystery for archaeologists, Troy was a name spoken with awe in the ancient world. It was said to be a wealthy city at the edge of Asia, controlling trade routes between the Aegean and the Black Sea. Its high walls and mighty gates made it nearly impossible to conquer. To the Greeks, Troy was the setting of the greatest war ever fought. The story begins with a fateful choice. The gods Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite asked Paris, a Trojan prince, to judge which of them was most beautiful. Each offered a bribe. Hera promised him power, Athena promised him victory in war, and Aphrodite promised him the love of the most beautiful woman alive, Helen, queen of Sparta. Paris chose Aphrodite, and soon after, he journeyed to Greece. Whether Helen went with him willingly or was taken by force, the outcome was the same. Paris brought her back to Troy. For the Greeks, this was an outrage. Helen's husband, Menelaus, king of Sparta, called upon his brother Agamemnon, the most powerful ruler in Greece. Together, they raised a coalition of kings and warriors, bound by an oath they had all once sworn to defend Helen's marriage. Over 1,000 ships crossed the Aegean, landing on the shores beneath Troy's walls. The war dragged on for years, with neither side able to claim victory. Troy was defended by its prince, Hector, brother of Paris, a warrior as noble as Achilles was fierce. It is here that Homer's Iliad begins, which is an ancient Greek epic poem attributed to Homer, telling the story of the Trojan War, focusing on the conflict between Achilles and Agamemnon. Rather than covering the entire war, it focuses on a few weeks in its final year, and on the wrath of Achilles. The spark came when Agamemnon insulted him. Forced to return his own war prize, a woman named Chryseis, Agamemnon took another to show his dominance. Chryseis, the prize awarded to Achilles. To Achilles, this was more than the loss of a captive. It was a humiliation, a theft of honor. Enraged, he withdrew from battle, leaving the Greeks to suffer defeat after defeat at Hector's hands. The tide turned only after tragedy. Patroclus, Achilles' closest companion, entered the fight wearing his armor, hoping to rally the Greeks. Hector met him at the gates of Troy and killed him. Grief drove Achilles back into battle. He hunted Hector down, killed him in single combat, and, in his fury, dragged the body behind his chariot. The Iliad ends not with Troy's fall, but with Hector's funeral, leaving the war's conclusion to other poems and legends. According to those later tales, Paris eventually struck down Achilles with a poisoned arrow to his heel, his only vulnerable spot. With their greatest champion gone, the Greeks turned to cunning. They built a massive wooden horse, hollow inside, and left it at Troy's gates, as if it were a gift to the gods. Believing the Greeks had sailed home, the Trojans brought the horse into the city. That night, as the people celebrated their apparent victory, Greek soldiers slipped out from the horse's belly, opened the gates, and signaled their fleet to return. The city was sacked, its walls torn down, its people slaughtered or enslaved. Helen was taken back to Sparta. To the Greeks, the Trojan War was not just a tale, but a historical memory, their defining legend. It explained their heroic age, their relationship with the gods, and the fragility of human pride. For centuries, Troy's story was told and retold, woven into the identity of Greeks and Romans alike, as Roman mythology adopted Troy as part of its legendary origins. But for modern scholars, one question persisted: was any of it real? The modern search for Troy began in the 19th century with an unlikely figure, Heinrich Schliemann. Born in Germany in 1822, Schliemann was not a trained archaeologist, but a self-made businessman with an obsession for the Homeric epics. He claimed to have memorized the Iliad as a child and vowed he would one day uncover the city itself. To many, this seemed absurd. By the mid-1800s, most scholars dismissed Troy as pure legend, but Schliemann was relentless. Guided by ancient texts and local advice from Frank Calvert, an English expatriate in Turkey, he turned his attention to a mound in northwestern Anatolia known as Hisarlik. What he found changed history. In 1870, Schliemann began excavations. His approach was crude, massive trenches dug straight through the mound, destroying valuable layers in his rush to find Homer's Troy. Modern archaeologists shudder at the damage he caused, but his persistence paid off. In 1873, he uncovered a cache of gold and precious artifacts, diadems, necklaces, and bronze weapons. He proclaimed it Priam's treasure, the riches of the Trojan king himself, father of Hector and Paris, and a central figure in the Iliad. Newspapers around the world erupted with headlines: had Homer's Troy truly been found? The discovery wasn't without scandal. Schliemann smuggled the treasure out of Ottoman lands, igniting diplomatic disputes that linger even today, and scholars pointed out that the artifacts were far older than the supposed time of the Trojan War, dating to around 2400 BC, a full 1,000 years before Homer's setting. Yet Schliemann had achieved something remarkable. Hisarlik was no ordinary hell. It was an ancient tell, a site built upon layer after layer of human habitation. Beneath the soil lay not one Troy, but many. Schliemann's discoveries captured imaginations, but the real work of untangling Troy's past fell to later archaeologists. Wilhelm Dürpfeld, who had worked with Schliemann, refined the site's chronology. He distinguished the different layers of settlement, noting that what Schliemann thought was Homer's Troy was actually much older. Later, Carl Blegen of the University of Cincinnati conducted systematic excavations in the 1930s. He identified Troy 7a, dating to the 12th century BC, as the most plausible candidate for Homer's city. This layer showed signs of destruction, perhaps by warfare. Decades later, Manfred Korfmann and his international team brought cutting-edge methods to Hisarlik. With ground-penetrating radar and careful stratigraphy, they revealed new dimensions of the city. Far from being a small citadel, Troy had an extensive lower town, fortified with strong walls and protected by ditches. This matched Homer's descriptions of a city both wealthy and formidable. Then came another clue: Hittite records. Among them was a treaty referring to a city called Velusa, a name strikingly similar to Ilios, one of Homer's terms for Troy. The text described Velusa as a powerful kingdom entangled in the politics of the Late Bronze Age. Suddenly, Troy wasn't just a poetic invention, it may have been a real city at the crossroads of empires. If archaeology could reveal the city, geology could explain its world. When Homer described Troy, he wrote of rivers, plains, and a coast no longer exists as it once did. Over thousands of years, the landscape shifted. The Scamander and Simois rivers altered course, silting up the bay where Greek ships were said to have landed. What is now dry farmland was once a broad shoreline, making Troy a maritime hub. Using sediment analysis, core drilling, and satellite imaging, researchers have reconstructed that Bronze Age environment. It turns out Troy wasn't isolated. It commanded one of the most strategic locations of the ancient world. Controlling Troy meant controlling access to the Dardanelles, the narrow strait linking the Aegean to the Black Sea. Trade, resources, and power all flowed through this bottleneck. It's not hard to see why rival powers might have clashed there, and why a war, later immortalized by poets, could have been remembered for centuries. And so we arrive at the central question: did the Trojan War really happen? The evidence is compelling, but not conclusive. Troy 7a may have been destroyed by Greek invaders, or by an earthquake, or by internal strife. Without written records, certainty is elusive. Some scholars remain cautious, insisting that Homer's story is myth, woven from fragments of memory. Others believe the epic was stylized retelling of a very real conflict. But whether or not the details are true, Troy's impact is undeniable. The Greeks saw it as their defining legend. The Romans claimed descent from its survivors, weaving it into their origin myths. Centuries later, European monarchs traced their lineages back to Trojan heroes, and artists and writers returned to its themes again and again. Even today, Troy appears in novels, films, and video games, its name a shorthand for glory and ruin. And the search continues. New technologies, from 3D imaging to molecular archaeology, promise to reveal more about this enigmatic site. Perhaps one day, a definitive piece of evidence will emerge: a tablet, a treaty, a record that settles the debate once and for all. Until then, Troy remains suspended between history and myth, a city born of poetry, uncovered by science, and still alive in the human mind. Sometimes the greatest discoveries are not just about the past, but about why we continue to search for it. Watch the next video for more ancient tales, and let us know in the comments below, which story would you like retold next?